Good afternoon, you wee bastards, and once again, yes, it is a good afternoon for me. One of my favourite vehicles of all time is being added into the game this patch, the T-80U. I wish I could say I was surprised, but honestly this was kinda inevitable. The Russian tech tree, as with the British, and certainly in the coming weeks America and Germany too, along with perhaps the other nations, is being extended into rank 7 with a new top tier MBT. Once again, I'm a wee bit late with this video, but once again, I've got some stuff to talk about that I thought this video was still well worth making. Now, if you lads don't know, I recently created a massive video project detailing my own suggestions for the addition and balancing of War Thunder's future tier 7, which I will link below and on screen if I remember this time. By the way, thank you to you lads for reminding me when I forget to do that. I highly recommend that you lads go watch that 3-part video if you haven't already, as I went into a ton of detail about where I believe the future of this game is, detailing tier 7 trees for all nations and how I believe they should be laid out. So what is this tank, this legend that I've been hyping up for months? For those of you who haven't seen my previous video, this is a upgrade of the T-80BV with a new type of explosive reactive armor. So the T-80B we have in game uses a 3-layer composite armor array with textilite sandwiched between steel plates. The T-80U, however, uses a 5-layer array, basically think a regular cheeseburger compared to a Big Mac, with an extra layer of steel in between. This array is the same as that of the T-80BV and should have around 60mm more effectiveness than our current in-game T-80B, although it may have less chemical effectiveness due to the removal of a layer of textilite, which is more effective than steel against shape charge warheads. That's just the tank itself though, but the armor of the T-80U extends much further. This tank is equipped with 2nd generation Kontakt-5 heavy explosive reactive armor, which not only affects chemical warheads like its predecessor, Kontakt-1, seen on the T-64B and T-80B in-game, but kinetic energy munitions as well. So if you haven't seen the videos where I talked about Kontakt-5, this stuff is really difficult to give accurate values on, because it doesn't so much add effectiveness to the tank's armor, but is more a one-time use thing, like all the ERA, that reduces the effectiveness of incoming projectiles. One thing I can safely say is that nothing in the same BR range will be capable of penetrating the Kontakt-5 and the T-80U's hull or turret in a single shot. Not frontally at least. Side on, you have a good chance depending on exactly how Gaijin models Kontakt-5. It should be noted however, and I'm sure we'll come back to this, but Kontakt-5 does not have the best coverage, and there are plenty of chinks in the armor where you'll be able to sneak rounds through, at least at close range. Actually, the whole frontal turret face between the light and the gun breech is not covered with any additional protection, and with more tier 7 tanks fielding more powerful shells on the way, this will be a very exploitable weak spot, along with the lower frontal plate, which also I believe has 0 ERA coverage and will be a familiar point for players to aim at. Even if there were ERA on the lower frontal plate, it's likely that you could still penetrate that section of the tank. If you see the flaps here and here, these are not part of the ERA, which is something I originally did not know. I thought of these dreadlocks here were part of the Kontakt-5 plates, but if you see, particularly this image shows it really well, these are just rubber panels that attach onto the tank. Something I really hope Gaijin does is give these flaps independent physics so that they respond to gravity like they do in real life. I'm not sure exactly what the function of these flaps was IRL, but in War Thunder they're going to act kind of like the bushes. Using bushes to cover a weak spot on a tank is a great tactic, because players obviously still know that the weak spot is there, but they cannot actually see it to shoot accurately at it. They kind of have to guess and use the rest of your tank as a reference. What this ERA actually does is slide 2 steel plates against each other upon detonation, which breaks apart the rods of incoming APFSDS shells, and pretty much every shell not specifically equipped with a method of dealing with this effect could not penetrate through it unscathed, regardless of how much penetration they actually have in millimeters. Once again, heavy ERA is complicated. Something like the American M829A3 shell, which is equipped with a heavy steel disposable tip, can destroy the ERA with that tip and not damage the main body of the rod, which then penetrates the tank's onboard armor. Something like a DM43 shell, however, with more penetration, in rolled homogeneous armor that is, could not get through it. This type of ERA is known as integrated ERA because of the way in which it attaches to the tank and the fact that it is not easily applied or removed. You have to do it back at base, unlike Kontakt-1, Blazer, and other types of first generation ERA that can be put on or taken off out in the field. Now, what the T-80U will have frontally is almost guaranteed survivability of the first shell. It should have guaranteed survivability of any shell that hits the Kontakt-5 plate at least. What players will then be able to do is angle their turret and hull in one direction, baiting players to shoot at the Kontakt-5 plates on that side, before then angling the turret the other way. Let's say you're fighting an Abrams and it might take you 2 or 3 shots to take him out because of the way he's covered or something, or you're mid-repair or fighting multiple enemies. You basically have as much survivability as you have ERA plates for the enemy to shoot at, because each one plate on your tank is one incoming shell you can completely negate. Now, this is just one way I see people using the ERA, and it's certainly a strategy I'll be attempting to try out as much as possible. That kind of strategy is the main thing that the T-80U will bring to the table, being able to repeatedly guarantee surviving shells. This thing might see the beginning of an armor meta back at top tier, which, if that does happen, is a concept that really excites me. The T-80U is also an upgrade in firepower. Gaijin states that it will have similar ammunition choices to its predecessors, and by similar I hope they do not mean the same APFSD as shells. If this thing doesn't have at least 3 BM32 Vant, then I am going to be very irritated. Really, it should be firing shells that are even more powerful than that if we're talking from a realistic standpoint, but War Thunder is hardly strictly realistic, so I'd settle for Vant being the top shell. What the main new ammunition choice that Gaijin references is the new 9M119 ATGM. Now, Gaijin says Reflex. Reflex is a tandem-shaped charge warhead, meaning it'll cut through any NATO ERA like it weren't even there, and still have around 700mm penetration or more afterwards. The thing is that the 119 missile is called Sphere and is not tandem-shaped, where the 119M is Reflex, so one of these is incorrect in the devlog. I would assume that we'll get Reflex if Gaijin specifically says Reflex. They must have just left out the M on the end of the 9M119M. That does just relate to a variant of the 119 missile series, I guess you could say. This is going to be interesting because it may be in relation to the M1A1, which I'm sure will come, getting a Tusk package with its own ERA. Otherwise, I don't see a tandem warhead being much use aside from in arcade mode. What this variant of the T-80U also brings is a new, more powerful gas turbine engine, which was fitted in 1990, I believe, and should give it greater mobility. Not sure about the top speed, it'll at least be the same even despite the increased weight, and the reverse speed will still be the same trudging pace compared to the ridiculousness that is the Abrams, along with the Leclerc and Type 10 if they're added this patch having some extreme reverse speeds. This lack of ability to reposition without exposing the sides and rear and basically just turning around and heading the other way will really be a significant hamper to this tank, so don't be afraid of this thing in game. All you'll have to do to fight it, and this does go for all of the Russian top tier vehicles, so keep this in mind, is reposition yourself to get a superior angle on it, something you'll be able to do much more efficiently than he will. Now, my biggest question for this machine is, will the Kontakt-5 ERA be coming to the tank in stock form? I'm sure this is a question many of you lads also have. Will this tank have the awful stock syndrome of not having its Kontakt-5 ERA? Because without Kontakt-5, this tank will by no means be a pushover, but it will not be nearly as much of a tough nut to crack, and forcing players to play the tank without ERA will not be a good teacher for them, as the tank with ERA might as well be a completely different vehicle. It will have a completely different playstyle, different nuances in its strategies it can employ. Basically, I really hope Gaijin gives us Kontakt-5 stock. The T-80U is an absolutely gorgeous tank, without a doubt my favourite looking MBT of all time, although the T-90M might be a contender for that spot these days. This will be a familiar style of tank and familiar style of gameplay to Soviet top tier tankers, however it will offer up the best of the nation in every way, and should create a very interesting meta with the new ERA. This is something players will have to get used to, as every Russian tank beyond this point will use heavy ERA, and the T-80U as a starting point for that is certainly something I'm very excited for. Anyway lads, that is going to be it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed and that you leave a like if you did, and let me know your thoughts on this machine in the comments section below. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell, join the 360 squad, and come follow me at all the social media links in the video description. If you would like to support the channel, please do remember to check me out on Patreon, which is also linked down below. I'd really appreciate the support. But until next time lads, always remember, keep your bagpipes close at hand, keep your kilt firmly on, and I shall see you in the next one. I say a wee thank you to these lads for supporting me on Patreon. S-Eagle Nuts, DA261, Latvian Wolf, Gisli Arson, and Dark Recon. You lads are bra. If you wish to join them, come check out the link in the description below.